Hey there, Kenneth French of Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. We're very, very happy you stopped by. Either you're going to watch this or listen to this because you want to take your business to the next level. You're probably an entrepreneur who's either just starting out or you've been around for quite a while and you want to take your business to the next level. You're probably a real estate investor, maybe even a real estate agent, maybe a professional or of some sort, professional advisor of some sort. And well, you are stopping by because you need some valuable advice from one of the top industry leaders there is. Anyway, thank you very much. Once again, Kenneth French, Vast Voice, telling business secrets to entrepreneurs. Really glad you stopped by.
What if you worked your entire life, I don't know, 30, 40 years and lost it all? Number one. Or number two, well, do you want to leave as many assets to your heirs as possible? Well, we're hanging out here with Bob Bloom, who's going to help provide some huge advice to keep money in your pocket. And who knows, maybe even make you a couple of pennies with respect to estate planning. Bob, I'm so glad you're here. How you doing over there?
Doing great, Kenner. Glad to be with you today.
Man, this is, a lot of people take estate planning, putting together wills, et cetera, for granted, but it's something really you should really think about as an entrepreneur because, again, you don't want to work for whatever, 30, 40 years and, well, give all your money to Uncle Sam, and you have some good strategies that are going to help a lot of viewers and listeners, correct?
Certainly do. And it's not only about giving all your money to Uncle Sam. It's also about taking care of yourself and your family. And so that's, family is most important to most people. And we're going to talk about exactly how we can protect our family from the typical things that happen when we're unprepared.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to change over our screen. So I'm going to share my screen. So our presentation will be driven by me, but you're going to be the one who's really adding so much value that it's going to be unbelievable to all these people. So I now have it on the screen. I have the first page obviously up on the screen where it says, when planning becomes protecting, an introduction to estate planning. By the way, my name is Kenneth French with vastsolutionsgroup.com. I'm one half of vastassetdefense.com. Real quickly, Bob, who are you?
I'm the other half of assetdefense.com. And we have joined forces in order to provide many, many important services to our clients. And this is one of them. It's estate planning.
That's awesome. So obviously the first slide, asset protection, lawsuit protection, et cetera. Why don't you help us to understand a little bit more about asset protection?
Well, asset protection has these three big parts to it. One is lawsuit protection. Another is reducing taxes, and that is where VAST really shines. VAST can help in reducing taxes, doing tax planning. Asset defense focuses primarily on lawsuit protection, and also number three, estate planning. That is within our practice area. So we're going to be talking about estate planning today, realizing that it is part of asset protection. All right.
Yep, I love it. Again, a lot of people don't even think about estate planning. They think, it's down the road. I don't have to worry about it. But it's vital because if you want to, save money for your heirs, really it starts today, not tomorrow when it's too late. You might as well get your, if you will, your plan in place because it could save vital money for your heirs, beneficiaries, and also be smart tactical planning down the road.
Absolutely right. So let's talk about estate planning. Here's the question: how many of you are getting older or know someone who is? And that's all of us. So we need to pay attention to estate planning. So let's get into the topic here. We're going to talk about primarily how estate planning helps your family, but also helps you. So let's continue on. Now, estate planning really solves two very important problems. And the first is estate taxes, and the other is probate. Now, for most people, estate taxes will not be an issue because the exemption amount is in the range of $26,000. Now, that goes up every year. It's adjusted for inflation. However, that was an amount that was created under the 2017 tax cuts and is due to expire at the end of 2025. Now, if Congress does not act to renew the tax cuts or make a new number, that number will revert to $7 million for a married couple. So we do have to pay attention to estate taxes. The issue is nobody knows what the estate tax exemption amount will be when we pass on, because that's well into the future. And this is a number that keeps changing. There's no guarantee it'll continue to go up. So we do have to at least consider estate taxes. Probate is something that'll happen to almost everybody unless they have a particular tool called a revocable living trust, which avoids probate. So that's primarily what we're going to be talking about, simply because it applies to most people.
And
Okay.
you're going to be defining probate and going into that a little bit later, correct?
Certainly will. You bet. You bet. So the estate tax exemption, as I mentioned, is on the federal level is over $13 million for an individual. It's double that for a couple. So we have plenty of clients who do have in excess of $27 million, and estate taxes will be an issue for them. But in addition, there are 17 states that have an inheritance tax on the state level of some kind. And it's either an inheritance tax or an estate tax. Just as an example, the state of Minnesota has an exemption amount of $3 million, and anything over $3 million is going to be taxed between 13 and 16%. So that's just one state out of the 17 as an example. So we do have to pay attention to estate taxes, and there is a particular tool that will do that.
By the way, real quickly, you keep saying we. Can you mention a little bit about your background and who we are, as far
Sure.
as your side of the ledger, meaning with your team over there, down there in Dallas?
Certainly. We're a group of legal professionals, attorneys and paralegals who practice estate planning, practice business law and asset protection. And so we're a firm, a business advisory firm and law firm that advises clients on issues just like we're talking about.
Got it. And that's Asset Defense Team. And you've been a practicing attorney for how long?
Over 30 years. So a long, long time.
But you
Yep.
don't look that old. You only look like you're 20 there,
Oh,
Bob.
thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Kenner.
yeah, no problem. Just real quick, and why did you make the leap from, let's say, the big corporation to now working with, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, real estate investors, et cetera?
Well, it's a long story, but we'll make it very short. And that is, I started out as a litigation attorney many, many years ago, and ended up realizing that litigation really is, number one, the lowest form of communication. It is when everything else has failed. All the attempts to resolve a dispute have failed. If people go to litigation, it's the biggest waste of time and money. And you never want to be in litigation unless you absolutely have to be there. It's a last resort. As I came to realize that, I mean, it looked great from the outside as a law student. You get to persuade people and a jury and this, that, and the other thing. But the reality is that happens very, very infrequently, getting in front of a jury and actually going to trial. 95% of all cases that are filed never go to court. They settle out of court. So I made the switch to something much, much more satisfying, and that is taking everything I learned suing people as a trial lawyer and using it to protect people as an asset protection lawyer. So that trial experience gave me a great insights into how to protect people, and a natural part of asset protection, as we talked about, is estate planning. So it's much more satisfying to help people instead of hurt people in litigation.
Yeah, I understand. And by the way, my name's Kenner French with vastsolutionsgroup.com. One half of vastassetdefense.com. We're here to help entrepreneurs really to, one, lower their taxes, two, asset protection, estate planning. We also have some business automation as well here at vastsolutionsgroup.com. But it's been an unbelievable pleasure doing business with you, working with you, because so many of our clients are entrepreneurs. They need help on the asset protection side, estate planning side. You opening this information up to our community within the Vast Vault is a huge deal. And I want people to really take advantage and really pay attention to some of these concepts, because there's so many people that could benefit from this. But anyway, why don't we get right back to it? So estate taxes, you want to go into this slide a little bit more in depth?
Yeah, on any given year, only 0.2% of estates are going to end up paying the estate tax. But as we mentioned, many of our clients, your clients, our clients as well, vast asset defense clients will end up potentially having an estate tax issue, whether they live in one of the 17 states or on a federal level, they have assets in excess of $27 million. So that is the case. All right. Now, as I mentioned, this will revert to, don't know why that is looking like that, but it will revert to $7 million per person unless Congress acts. So we'll hope Congress gets its act together this year and does something to help the estate tax issue.
Said no one ever, right? Anyway,
That's right.
all right. Estate planning tools. This is a big one.
Well, that's right. So estate planning tools are a couple. One is an irrevocable trust, and we use that to reduce or avoid estate taxes because when we use an irrevocable trust, we're actually taking assets out of our estate, putting it into a trust, and when we put it into an irrevocable trust, that is out of our estate. In other words, we have given those assets to the trust, and that is not a trust that we control necessarily and not necessarily a trust that we're going to benefit from. It is a trust that will benefit others, potentially, most likely our loved ones. So we can get assets out of the estate by putting them into an irrevocable trust. So as I mentioned, estate planning avoids two problems. We've talked very briefly about estate taxes, but now we're really going to focus on probate avoidance because that is a problem that will affect everybody. So the difference between a will and a trust, which many people ask, is what is the difference? And in practical effect, a will takes you to probate and a trust will avoid probate. So if you want to stay out of probate court, then you want to have a revocable living trust. People often ask, well, what is probate? And what does that mean? I think that's on our next slide. If we can go to that, that's right. And so probate is a judicial process that, can you go to the next slide, Kenner? There we go. It's a judicial process that takes place in court. You're going to have to hire an attorney who will evaluate assets. They'll create an inventory of assets, and that has to be filed with the court. And then the purpose of probate is this. Think if you passed away in the next minute. You would owe people money, most likely your credit card bills, and people would owe you money. And certainly a life insurance company would probably owe you money and probably others as well. So the purpose of probate is to make sure that creditors, people you owe money to, have an ability to make a claim against your estate. And an estate is simply whatever you have. And then those creditors would be paid out of your estate. We want the probate process also make sure that any money due to your estate is paid in to the estate. And when all of that is completed, probate is closed and the assets then can finally be distributed according to the will. All right. That can take a long time.
I know me as an investor, et cetera. I don't want people to know my assets, what type of net worth I have, what I owe, what I own, et cetera. You know what I mean?
Right. And many people don't. Many people prefer the privacy of avoiding probate. Now, family history people love probate because they're able to, see probate records from years and years ago, and it'll typically show all the members of the family, and they're trying to create a family history. And so probate records are great if you're a genealogist, but for most people, you'd really want to keep your assets private and no prying eyes, because if your loved ones are inheriting a sum of money, and bad actors can learn that simply by looking at probate records, they can be the victim of scams and other things, especially when they come into money that they've never really had before. So a lot of people would really prefer to keep everything private because probate is going to be a public record. It could be expensive in some states. Up to 10% of the estate can be eaten up in probate expenses in some states. It can be lengthy. It could be months or years for probate to close in certain situations. And a will is subject to will contests. In other words, someone who is not provided for in the will or thinks they didn't get enough money in the will can challenge the will, which is a separate lawsuit, and that can drag on for years and years and years. So I had a client that was not originally our client, but she came to us completely frustrated with this probate process. She had been in the will. It meant to inherit a house that her father owned, but the problem was her brother was living in the house. And he was essentially a squatter. He was not paying rent. He was a hoarder on top of it. And so the house literally was falling apart while he was living in this house for 10 years because she didn't have legal title to the house. It was not being maintained. The roof was leaking. She had no legal right until probate was closed to evict him, to do anything with regard to the maintenance of the property. And this house was literally a really valuable asset, was literally diminishing in value before her very eyes, and she could do nothing about it because they could not close probate.
Yeah, we have, and by the way, I note here that you say, probate in multiple states even more costly. What do you mean by that?
Well, if someone owns assets in more than one state, typically real estate investors who do, they will, if they do not have a living trust, they will go through probate in every state where they own real estate.
Yeah.
And so that can really be costly.
Yeah, we had a client 8 years ago, and we're still fighting through a probate. He had a will, but it was kind of messed up, and he was worth, well, they said 90 million, but he was worth way more than that. Big name guy, sadly committed suicide. He became a client afterwards, but long story as to what the specifics were. But man, we're still going through it, and the kids. It seems like the kids, all the money is going. No offense, all the money is going to the attorneys and not to the kids, not to theoretically the people that our client, who his estate actually, because he died, would have wanted. He probably would have wanted the money going to the kids and even stepkids versus to the attorneys. And if he would have done some planning beforehand, it would have helped a huge amount, I would have thought.
Yeah. And that's why, we're calling this when planning becomes protecting, because when you plan, you really do protect your family from a situation just like you described.
Yeah.
So to avoid the problems with a will, we use a trust. And there are two types of trust. We've already talked about an irrevocable trust. That's the one we would use to move assets out of the estate to avoid estate taxes or minimize estate taxes. But the more common type of trust is called a revocable trust. And often it's called a revocable living trust. And the reason is the term living simply means you set it up while you're alive, as opposed to what is called a testamentary trust, which is a trust that becomes which springs into life the moment you pass on. So that is the difference. So to avoid probate, we want to use this wonderful type of trust called a revocable living trust. All right. Now, revocable is a very important term because it means you can revoke it at any time. That means you can cancel the trust. You completely control the trust. You can change anything about the trust at any time. Not a difficult thing to do. All right. It eliminates probate because the estate now can be distributed within days or even weeks rather than months or years. That's very important for many, many people. It's much easier to amend or change a trust than it is to change a will. There are with a living trust, no expensive legal fees, court costs, because you're not going to court. There is no probate court. And for many people, probably the most important thing is it maintains your family's privacy. All right. So with a revocable living trust, your trust cannot be contested in court as a will can be contested. All right. So very important point. With one revocable living trust in the state where you live, you can protect yourself from probate in all other states where you may own real estate or any other types of assets. So we eliminate the possibility of probate in multiple states. Revocable living trust allows you to specify very carefully how your assets are going to be passed on and to whom. So in other words, we can say in a living trust, and it's very common for clients to want to do this. For example, Kenner, let's imagine you have a child who is 20 years old and you passed away, tomorrow. You would not want your child at 20 years old to inherit millions of dollars. And the reason is we all know what would happen, fancy cars and et cetera, not well used. The money would not be well used. So we're able to, with a living trust, say at age 20, we'll let the child receive this much money. At age 30, we'll let the child receive a little bit more. At age 40, when they finally are starting to figure out the value of money, we'll let them get more. And maybe even the rest of the inheritance would come even possibly at a later date. People can also specify, my son, if he is, or daughter, he or she is on drugs, they will not inherit anything until they are clean for a period of years. Because obviously, what would happen if they inherited a bunch of money while they're being addicted. So there are lots of very specific provisions that we can make in a living trust, which is not that practical to do in a will.
See, to me, there's a lot of power in that because you're basically from the grave controlling what happens to the assets. And I think that's as a parent, I really I want to dictate from the grave what kind of income stream or where or when my assets go to my heirs potentially.
Well,
I
and
think
you're
that's really, really powerful.
Well, you're right because as a parent, you know best you know your children better than anybody, and you know what is best for your children, and you know what would harm your children. So obviously, you want to be able to continue to bless your children, even though you may not be present.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
I don't know if you want to go over that.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah. And a revocable living trust also can not only provide for your children, your grandchildren, and even generations beyond that, but it can also protect your heirs from creditors with the use of what is called a spendthrift clause. So, which means that even though they may have a future interest in some money or assets, that cannot be taken from your children, even if they are found liable in a lawsuit.
By the way, do you want me to ask my questions at the end? Because I have a
Oh,
whole
no.
bunch of questions,
Oh, no,
or do you
pop
want me to?
anytime.
All right. So, and I don't know if you have a slide on this or not, but I'm going to ask it now. So, can all this gobbledygook, I'm going to call it gobbledygook out of respect, can I do it on my own, or can I not do it on my own as an investor, as an example?
I think you would see when you look at trust documents how complex they are, that it would really be foolhardy to try to do it on your own. There are so many provisions, and typically when we create a trust for someone, we go through many, many sessions, 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 sessions with them to really narrow down the language of what they want, because a lot of times people haven't thought up through these issues. We're going to see some of the issues coming up that we really would rather not think about because they involve end of life issues. So people want to take time to think about it. Let me talk to my spouse. Let me consider that kind of thing. So there's so many complex nuances that go into a trust that it would be really, really foolhardy to try to do it on your own.
And let's say I had a revocable living trust.
Mhm.
Let's say I put it together 10 years ago. Um, would you say I should get it reviewed
Mhm.
every 10 years, every 3 years, every 5 years, etc.?
Well, periodically at least, and especially when some new life event happens, for instance, the death of a spouse and a remarriage, that would definitely call for probably major amendments to the trust, or perhaps a brand new trust, because it's a completely different situation. We now have perhaps a blended family that we didn't have before. And that raises new issues. So, when there's a life event that can change the outcome of what you've originally dictated in the trust, then it ought to be reviewed. That could be, every period of years, whether it's 5 or 10 years, whatever, but certainly at a major life event.
And before I forget, because I always seem to, how does one get a hold of you if they're interested in having you review a trust or put together such items as a revocable living trust, as an example?
They can either contact Vast if they're more familiar with Vast, or they could contact Asset Defense Team. That would be info@assetdefenseteam.com, or they could call our office at 945-733. I'm forgetting my own number.
All right.
Well, we have it at the end.
All right. By the way, just in case, I know people know, but how do you spell info at Asset Defense Team?
info at
Mhm.
ASSETDEFENSE, not the British spelling with a C, team.com.
Awesome. And once again, as a reset, your name's Bob Bloom. You're with Asset Defense Team. I'm with vastsolutionsgroup.com, which rolls up to vastassetdefense.com. We've put that together to help businesses not only with tax strategy, but also with asset protection and estate planning. And here we're talking about estate planning. So why don't we go to the next slide?
All right. Revocable Living Trust. It also benefits you while you're alive, and your trust provides for your care in your later years. A lot of people think that a living trust is, or an estate plan is primarily to benefit our children. Yes, it does benefit our children or our loved ones, but really, primarily, I think what we're going to see in just a few minutes is it really takes care of you. And you need to be able to provide for yourself.
Bob, this is huge. I mean, I forgot. This is big. People, I hope you guys are watching and listening and really, really absorbing this because Bob just mentioned something that's very important. Sometimes people think about, revocable living trust really for their heirs, but also it's to take take care of you when you're in your later years, and that's pretty big because man, there's a lot of elements that people don't think about with respect to revocable living trust in their later years. But anyway, I mean, uh, people have got to pay attention to this stuff because a lot of people, keep putting it off. Just like my example of that, net worth that client that had $90 million at a minimum. He didn't even think about this stuff, and he really should have. Obviously, he had some big issues at the end. But man, there are so many things to think about, and me as an investor, I don't know. I can't put together a revocable living trust. I need to go to someone like you, who's really, I would say, the godfather of this stuff. I mean, you've been doing it for a long time, and
Mhm.
you know some of the ins and outs, and you could kind of move the ball, closer to the goal line because you know how to couch things, put things in certain terms that, you know, might make it a little bit, I won't say enjoyable to talk about my death, but a little bit a little bit easier to deal with. Otherwise, a lot of people keep putting this stuff off because it's not fun to talk about.
Right. So true. So
Um,
true. But it has to be talked about. So let's continue on. Um, let's see. I think we want to look at the next screen. Um, there are, let me give you something else about this.
there.
My wife and I will go on vacation from time to time, and I'll be saying, honey, come on, we got to go to the airport, and she'll be cleaning the house, and I'll say, why are you bothering to clean the house? Let's go. And she'll say, I can't enjoy myself on vacation if I know I'm coming home to a house that I have to clean. All right.
Mhm.
In other words, it's a psychic kind of benefit that she gets by leaving the house in pristine condition to go on vacation. She can finally relax. And my point in bringing this up is that when we have our estate in order, it provides psychic benefits. In other words, you sleep better at night, things are in order, and it just reduces the amount of stress. It's one less thing we have to think about, in other words. And so I just want to bring up that point because that is among all the other tangible benefits. This is a major intangible benefit.
Yeah, I got one for you here, and this is very, very, very factual. I was flying to wherever, and all of a sudden we hit a pocket of huge turbulence. Oh my gosh, I'll never forget it. I was in Colorado, flying into Denver, where sometimes it could be pretty crazy as far as the turbulence. And I started to freak out. Oh my gosh, is this the end? Is this the end? You're gonna be surprised. I remembered then that I had all this stuff taken care of, almost all the way taken care of. And believe it or not, that gave me peace. I know it sounds crazy, but that really was true. I thought I was done for. I'll never forget that. And I know it sounds crazy, but man, look, while it was still crazy, in the air, in the turbulence, I was at peace because the
Mhm.
stuff was taken care of. I knew my kids were gonna be taken care of. But man, I mean, that says the power of some of this stuff, of a revocable living trust or whatever the case is, because I knew that my kids would be taken care of as far as my assets, my estate plan was taken care of.
Right. Absolutely. It makes a major, major difference. Looking at this slide, I've got an arrow at number one, a living trust. And that's what we've been talking about is a revocable living trust. But it is one part of an estate plan because there are many other documents, also often called ancillary documents, that are very, very important to have. And we're going to go through what many of these do. So keep in mind, while the living trust is a major part of an estate plan, it is not the plan in and of itself. So there are these ancillary documents we want to talk about. So here we go.
And there's no way I could, and I've been doing, advising to entrepreneurs, real estate entrepreneurs for years. There's no way I could put this together. And I've been doing it for years. It's pretty
Hmm.
difficult to put this together. You have to be an attorney who really, really understands it. Obviously, you do.
Hmm. Correct. All right. So, as I talked about, your estate plan is going to benefit you during your life, and it solves many, many problems because none of us are going to get out of this thing alive. We're all going to pass on. And, we really would like to pass on like my grandfather who died peacefully in his sleep and not like his passengers screaming in the back seat of his car. So that's the way we want to go, die peacefully in our sleep, but we don't know how that's going to happen. All right. So one of the questions that will a trust will solve is what if you and this is a concern that many people have. We have maybe young children and a husband and wife are talking to me and they say, well, what's going to happen if we both are in a car accident and we're killed together? Well, who would raise your minor children if you're both gone? And the short answer is, and the next slide, you'll see that we would, in an estate plan, be able to designate a guardian who you would choose to be the best person to raise your children. And without this designation, the state, some court who has no idea who your family is or they will decide who's going to raise your children. And that could be the last person you would want to raise your kids. All right. So you want to have that control and designate who would raise your kids. Now, what if you don't get all of your assets into your trust before you die because, maybe you just bought a new car, you bought some stock, et cetera, et cetera? Well, you would have what is called a pour over will, which transfers, and think of that image. It literally pours over into your trust at the moment you die, those assets you did not get into the trust. They will then be distributed according to the terms of the trust. Otherwise, they would be distributed according to intestate rules, which are, specified in statute that so and so gets this and so gets that. That may not be the way you wanted it to go. All right.
Question. So, let's say I'm making this up, 10 things into my trust and I leave whatever 90 outside of it, meaning that are now eligible for the pour over will. Will they be able to move all 90 things, as an example, into the trust as a result?
Yes, and that's what the pour over will does. Now, there's a major caveat, and that is because they were not in the trust at the moment of death, they will go through probate.
Yeah.
So they will
Yeah.
those assets out of the trust, subject to the pour over will still go through probate, but they will be distributed according to the terms of the trust rather than according to intestate. And once again, let's use that example of a son or daughter who's on drugs. And now, according to the statute, which has no concern whether they're on drugs or not, they're going to get a bunch of money, which you didn't want them to receive while they're addicted.
In other words, you'd rather not really have to depend on the pour over will. You'd
That's
rather
right.
do everything in good order, but at least that's kind of a catch-all or emergency to help you in case you forget or you get some assets after you've put together the trust to be able to put into the trust itself.
That's right. That's well said.
Yep.
It's a catch-all. That's right.
Yep.
It's kind of a plan B. So also we have a declaration of trust as part of the estate plan, which confirms your intent to include all of your assets in the trust, and that might help to avoid probate. Courts really do try to defer to your intent. So if you can express what your intent is, the court may go along with it and avoid probate on those assets. No guarantee. Courts are all different, but at least we want to designate what is our intent.
Mm. Some of these might be leading questions, but this one I really don't know the answer to, Bob. Do you come in afterwards and work with clients who, are have died, and you're working with their beneficiary to help with the poor will after the person or your client has become deceased?
Well, to an extent, yes,
Mm,
but we don't go through we're not probate lawyers, in other
got
words.
it. Yeah.
Uh, so probate will be something that we're trying to avoid by by creating these plans. Uh, but if somebody really needs probate services, we'll refer them to a probate lawyer. Hopefully not.
Got it. Okay, I understand. Or at the same time, let's say someone is going through this process and they need your help. What you're saying is you would refer them to someone else and
Yes,
probably help with the whole process.
that's right.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, so what if you want to keep the details of your trust private, but a bank insists on seeing your trust, which sometimes they do. Sometimes financial institutions may do that. Well, we have a short summary of the trust that will list the really basic things about the trust. Who is the trustee? Who are the successor trustees? Who might be the beneficiaries? That keeps the bulk of your trust private. It confirms your unlimited right to deal with all trust assets, provides basic information about the trust, like I mentioned, but keeps the most important details private, such as who's going to get what and in what amounts, etc. So a
Mhm.
certification of trust is a very important document that will go to third parties.
Understand.
Okay. What if you can't communicate? What if you're ill to the point that you really can't? And how could you tell your family what care you want? This brings to mind the Terry Schiavo case. And for those of who are a little too young, they may not be familiar with her, but Terry Schiavo was a young woman in her 20s, I believe, who inexplicably went into a coma and never came out of it. She was married, a young married wife, and her husband. Now she had, by the way, been in a coma for a long period of time. Her doctors insisted she was in a vegetative state. There was no brain activity, said the doctors. Her parents, when they visited her, would detect maybe a smile, maybe something, and they believed that Terry was going to come out of this coma. Her husband, of course, wanted to move on with his life. He was still married to her, but that was no kind of life for him. And so he wanted to let her expire peacefully and naturally. Her parents wanted to keep her on life support forever and ever, assuming that at some point she would come out of it and wake up. Well, there was a major, major battle. I mean, the governor of Florida, where she lived, got involved. The president of the United States got involved. And, it was in
Mhm.
headline news, about this battle. Should she live? Should she die? It was finally decided in a court to let Terry expire naturally. Now, the question is, if you were in Terry's situation, what would you want? Would you want to be kept alive on life support machines forever and ever until who knows when? Or would you favor what happened eventually and just be kept comfortable and be allowed to pass on naturally? What would you be your preference? And there are many gradations of that. And so this is one of those hard things to think about. We don't want to think of ourselves in that situation, but we do have the right and the ability with a carefully drafted estate plan to specify exactly what type of care we would want in a situation like that. Pull the plug or not. Okay.
It
Difficult thing to think about.
it really is difficult. That's why I think going to you would be good because you can kind of walk us through us as your clients, walk us through that process because that's a
Mhm.
difficult thing to talk about with a spouse and your kids. And I think you can help. And that's really where the value is that you're providing.
Right. That's correct. Um, so a living will, also called an advanced medical directive, is the document we would have as part of the estate plan where you can express exactly what you would want. You would maybe be able to say, I want 3 doctors to all,
Mhm.
confirm that there is no chance of coming out of this, that kind of thing. 4 doctors, 5 doctors, whatever it may be. But that way you can tell your family what your wishes are, and that avoids a real conflict between family members who want to keep you alive versus those who want to let you, they would say mom would not want that. All right. What if you already have a living will and a medical directive, which many people do, because anytime you go to the hospital for any kind of a procedure, they make you sign one. They want to know what you want. So if you do have one already, it's probably a good idea to have that reviewed and make sure that it's consistent with your overall estate plan. All right, not a bad idea. All right. So then let's go to the next slide. And what if you can't communicate? Who's going to make medical decisions for you? And this happened to my mother-in-law, who was diagnosed with stage 4 terminal cancer. And she was in the hospital for about 2 months. She could not communicate at all. And the doctors would come in and say, we could do this procedure to, provide palliative care. We need informed consent. Well, she couldn't give informed consent because she couldn't communicate. So some of the family said, well, yeah, let's do it. Let's keep mom comfortable as much as we can. And others said, no, it's a waste of time and money. And she wouldn't want endless procedures done on her. She would want to just be able to go in peace. And once again, the family was at war and hard feelings erupted between children. And, when you, the solution is, we're going to see in the next slide, that we're going to be able to designate what is called a medical power of attorney. And that would be my brother, my sister, my oldest child, who I trust the most, to make decisions for me, to provide informed consent. All right. So you want to have a medical power of attorney. And not only, and this is one of the things that causes us to have 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 sessions, you want to have an alternate and a successor to the alternate and a successor to the successor. Because even though you designate somebody to be your medical power of attorney, it doesn't mean they have to do it. They may not be in a position where they can. Maybe they live halfway across the country. So, you want to have backups to whoever you designate. How are your loved ones going to have access to your medical information if, because there is a law called HIPAA, which provides restrictions on the people who have access to your medical information. We would have, as part of an estate plan, what is called a HIPAA waiver, where you designate certain people to have access to your medical information so they can make the best medical decisions for you. Okay. Now let's assume you're a real estate investor. You got a whole bunch of rental properties, and now you're in a nursing home and you're maybe not all there anymore. Who's going to run your business? Because you can't let these houses just deteriorate, and that's a business that has to be attended to. And quite frankly, there was a widow in Highland Park who, Highland Park is a very rich area of Dallas. I mean, there are mega millionaires and even potentially, definitely billionaires as well. And the city would send, it's a very small city in Dallas, very rich residents. And the city would send a kind of like the city budget to everybody every year. And, obviously the city budget is in millions and millions and millions of dollars, police, fire, every maintenance and everything else. Well, this woman was just a little bit addled, a little old, and she actually wrote a check to the city for the entire budget. So you want to make sure that whoever has the checkbook knows what they're doing.
I remember that story, by the way. I totally remember that story. It's a crazy story.
It's a very real thing. Okay, so let's assume you have crypto, you have digital assets. Because more and more of our lives, or financial lives, are online. How are you going to provide for that? And in the next slide, you'll see that we actually have actual language in the estate plan that provides for your digital assets. Who's going to have access and custodianship of those? All right. So we all have things that are important to us, whether it's the grand piano, the gun collection, the watch, the ring, wedding ring, whatever it is. And we have, in the next slide, you'll see the ability to designate who gets, I want my son to get my gun collection. I want my daughter to get the grand piano, my other daughter to get my wife's, mom's wedding ring, etc. This avoids family fights. It creates family harmony. It's, one kid, well, gee, I wanted that. Without this, they're going to fight over it. And that's the last thing you want. You want your family to be loving and friendly and at peace with each other. All right.
By the way, this is huge because we were of one situation where the client got mad at us because we weren't representing him. We were representing his sister anyway, and they were fighting. It was really ugly. And if they would have had all the stuff in place, it would have been so much easier because the family basically, they split up. They hate each other now, which
Yeah.
is sad.
I
But
know. And
it would have been so much easier if they would have had a proper plan in place, and then it would have been a good distribution of the assets versus the two loved ones, if you will, fighting. Unbelievable.
absolutely right. Completely right. We went out in 2021, 4 years ago, before the pandemic, and we're just asking a few other law firms what their fees were for various trusts. As you can see, a trust package for two spouses, they were charging in 2021 $7,500. Minimum trust package just for an individual was $5,000. I can guarantee, with inflation ensuing since then and post pandemic, that it is way more than that from that particular law firm. For us, an estate plan for a couple, we charge $3,900. For a complete estate plan for a single person, it's $3,400. The reason for the difference is, for the couple, we draft dual documents. In other words, two last wills and testaments, two pour over wills, two medical powers of attorney, two HIPAA waivers, et cetera, because those are individualized to each part of the couple. So that is it. Well, finally, I can remember our phone number. It's 945-542-7738. You caught me off guard, Kenner. Sorry. I don't call that number. That's not my number. That's the office number. So
I get it. I totally get it. I know.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So that is our pricing. But anybody interested can feel free to either call us or contact us at info@assetdefenseteam.com. All right.
I got a couple more questions, if that's okay, Bob.
Sure.
So what does this mean? So what's an engagement look like? And for the audience, they probably should know this. What's the engagement look like for $3,900? What's it like? Does the client send in a bunch of paperwork with their assets? Do they meet with you? Do they meet with someone else? What does that look like?
Well, we send a questionnaire that requests certain basic information, which we'll then use to draft a first go at a trust,
Okay.
The first version, and then we'll send that first draft of the trust to the individual and or the couple. And we'll ask them to review certain parts, because it's going to be about 100 pages or more.
Mhm.
And then after they've had a chance to review the spots that we say, would you please pay attention to this area, this area, this area, not expecting them to read through 100 pages of legalese, then we'll circle back. We'll then want to deal with those particular areas where they have questions, where we have questions, and we'll continue to build out the trust. And once again, that will take a series of calls, typically over Zoom and or phone, which is the way business is done these days anyway. All right.
Can I be a client in Delaware versus California, or where do you do business?
Yeah, we'll do business wherever the client may be, and
Okay.
these are often our existing clients who then come back to us and request a trust. So we will continue to work with them. Yep.
Okay. Let's say I have, let's say I'm international. Let's say I'm a client and I'm in the UK. I have assets in Delaware, United States. Can you help me with respect to putting together a plan as well?
We can. We may possibly refer you to a Delaware estate attorney, but we can help you as well. It depends on the issue. When we are dealing with an international client, there are international concerns that we have to take into consideration. Certainly, we can cover the U.S. assets, but we want to make sure that we're also taking into consideration the home country's rules and regulations with regard to trusts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, a few more questions, Bob.
Yep.
Let's say I do have an estate plan that's I use the example of 10 years old. Um, Give me the specifics on renewing it. That is something you do. What does that look like?
Well, once again, that's really a review of the estate plan. We don't have to, unlike for instance an LLC or a corporation, we don't have to renew it each year with the state. These are not filed with the state; these are private
Mhm.
documents. And so once you create an estate plan, it is good for for a long, long time. I mean, you could set it up, 10 years ago and never touch it, and it would become still effective at your passing. Uh, that's not a wise thing to do because you ought to review it from time to time. Because let's say you designated so and so to be your medical power of attorney, or even your durable power of attorney to run your business for you.
Mhm.
Well, maybe they've passed on. Maybe they're no longer. Maybe you're no longer friends. Maybe something has happened where you've lost trust in them, and you wouldn't want them handling your estate for the benefit of your children.
Mhm.
Because you start out being the trustee of your own trust. But eventually, when you're no longer able to be the trustee, you have to turn over the control to someone else as a successor trustee. So we want to make sure that the people you've designated to, help you in your later years are still people that you can rely on, people who are still here on Earth, and people that would be willing to continue to assist you.
All right. So then what about, obviously you've talked about some kind of ancillary services that you provide over there at Asset Defense Team. What are they? And can you kind of give us a kind of a flavor for maybe the pricing, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, I mean, we do a lot of things at Asset Defense Team. One is asset protection. We can create comprehensive asset protection plans, meaning we look at your vulnerabilities, liabilities, the assets themselves, and determine the best way to protect those assets from potential creditor claims. We will also do estate planning. We do business law as well. We draft contracts, review contracts,
Mm.
etc. And anything related to entities, we handle maintenance plans to make sure the entities remain active and in good standing, and so many services like that. We love having joined with Vast because we're able to offer accounting and bookkeeping and commercial lending and many other services that we did not provide. So it's a great joint venture with Vast.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so excited we've done this. I mean, I can't tell you how many of our clients have said, "Man, I'm glad you guys have now estate planning and asset protection," especially with the likes of you, Bob. You're one of the biggest names in that world. So it's been a great partnership. I cannot thank you enough. And I know, and the reason I decided to do so was because I know you're a guy that we can trust. I know that you're an attorney who knows his stuff, and you, at the end of the day, I can trust to take care of our clients. That's the most important thing. That's the reason, really, decided to go into the partnership. It's been a great strategic alliance.
Well, and it's just going to get better as we continue to figure things out. So I'm excited as well. There are just a few more things that I want to point out
Please.
on these slides, if we may. Oh, there it is. I guess that's a big listing of a lot of the things we do. So anybody can see that we do. Gosh, a lot more than I thought. How's that?
I mean,
As you can see.
Bob.
So let's look at kind of the second half of that: tax reduction, tax accounting, bookkeeping, tax return filing, qualified plans like 401ks, defined benefit plans, third party administration, retirement planning, commercial property financing, and captive insurance plans. Those are all things that we did not offer prior to joining with Vast, and are thrilled to be able to offer all of those wonderful services now to our clients.
Yeah, we really are now a one-stop shop. There's so many people, so many solopreneurs that, they're out talking to their whatever, to their asset protection attorney, then they have to talk to, their bookkeeper, then they have to talk to their 401k provider. Now it's all under one umbrella. And it's really made it nice because now we, as an example, can basically work as basically the general manager for the client instead of them going, everywhere instead of just to one spot. And the clients that we've communicated with are very, very happy. So that slide, it's funny you say you didn't even know we do some of these things. You knew it, but more than anything, it's nice for the entrepreneur knowing that everything is taken care of by one group here at vastassetdefense.com. Again, a result of Asset Defense team on your side, and then over here at vastsolutionsgroup.com. So are there any things you want to kind of leave us with as we get ready to sign off?
Yeah, I'd like to continue as to why people sometimes say, well, why should I bother to plan my estate? I mean, let's just let it happen. Well, there are a lot of good reasons, and you'll see that each one of these is kind of listed, one after another. Anything good requires a plan. Here are some comments that I get. I feel so good. This is finally done. Really, really, I get that all the time. I've been meaning to do this for a long time. I'm sleeping better already. Getting this done relieves so much stress. And that's really true for so many people. One person said, go back to that if you would, Kenner. One person said, this is empowering. And it really is, because it puts you in control rather than allowing just whatever's going to happen. And then people will finally say, I finally have peace of mind. And that's really what you were talking about in the turbulence, on the airplane, peace of mind. What's that worth? How can you value peace of mind?
I can tell you it was worth a lot when I was coming into that airport. It was worth a lot. I can't even tell you.
Yeah. So planning your estate really is an expression of love for your family. So, one of our clients said, the most important thing in my life is knowing that my wife and kids are protected forever. And that's really what it's all about. Our families are the most important thing to us. And so we're protecting our family. We're helping our family and blessing them in so many ways. So this is when planning becomes protecting. And that is what estate planning is all about. We're protecting our family. There you go.
Oh, Bob, I've enjoyed this. And for all those listeners and viewers out there, really, hopefully you've taken you've really soaked this up, because it's as Bob's outlined so many things that are going to help you as an entrepreneur to make sure you're protecting your assets. And the best time to start isn't tomorrow. The best time to start is now, because you don't want to be in that situation where I mentioned before, where our client had over $90 million net worth. And, obviously things went very south for him. And also ultimately for his heirs, beneficiaries, kids and stepkids. Why not take care of it for the low price of, it sounds like $3,900. I mean, even if the charge is $5,000, it's probably worth it, because most of the people who are watching and listening to this have net worths that are, that's pennies, basically pennies on the dollar for you to make sure that, you're taking care of in maybe your later years, and also that, your kids, maybe even stepkids, maybe grandkids are taken care of. Why not start now? Anything else, Bob, real quick?
What's that, Kenner? Sorry.
Anything else right now, real quick, as we sign off?
No, I think we've covered it all, and we're happy to help. And once again, thrilled with our joint venture, and looking forward to a long relationship.
And once again, everyone, thank you very much for taking the time to watch and listen to this. We know that it's going to add value to you. For taking time to touch base with Bob and his team, you'll be happy you did. Once again, Ken and French, vastsolutionsgroup.com, signing off. Thank you, everybody.